Give me your license now." Officer Blakely's voice sliced through her open window like winter air searching for blood. To him, her Mercedes wasn't transportation, it was evidence. Her judicial robe? A costume too elaborate to be believed. "Step out of the vehicle," he demanded, one hand already resting on his holster. "I need to know how you came to possess this automobile." "Officer, I've committed no traffic violation," Judge Zora Hathaway said, voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "Don't play games with me. We've had 3 luxury vehicle thefts this week. That costume doesn't fool me," he sneered. His radio squawked as he pulled her door open, yanking her arm. "Dispatch, I've got a possible grand theft auto, suspect in custody." The black robe billowed as she stood, the gold emblem of the federal judiciary catching late afternoon sunlight. Because she wasn't just driving home from work, she was the Honorable Zora Hathaway, Chief Federal Judge of the Eastern District. Now she faced him, silent, breathing slowly, watching understanding dawn like a slow, terrible sunrise. What will happen when the officer realizes who he's accosting on the side of this busy highway? How will the police department respond when they discover their officer has detained a sitting federal judge? Will his stammered excuses matter after crossing this line? And what consequences await those who judge first based on skin color, not the law they're sworn to uphold? Let's see how justice unfolds when the tables are dramatically turned. Evening was settling over the city of Westlake, the sky painted in muted purples against the urban silhouette. Rush hour traffic crawled along Jefferson Boulevard, a major artery connecting downtown to the wealthy eastern suburbs where many of the city's power brokers resided. Car horns punctuated the rhythm of the city, impatient drivers eager to escape the workday grind. Judge Zora Hathaway had just concluded a complex sentencing hearing that had run 2 hours over schedule. At 45, she carried herself with the quiet gravitas earned through 15 years on the bench, the last 3 as Chief Federal Judge of the Eastern District. The day's black robe still draped her slender frame as she drove her silver Mercedes S-Class, a vehicle purchased 3 years ago to celebrate her historic appointment. The leather-bound case containing tomorrow's docket rested on the passenger seat beside her, pages flagged with color-coded tabs, her evening's homework. Traffic had thinned as she crossed into Oak Ridge Heights, an exclusive enclave where century-old oak trees lined impeccably maintained streets. Her thoughts remained on the difficult sentencing she'd just delivered. 18 years for a white-collar criminal whose fraud had devastated hundreds of retirees. The defendant's family had wept openly in her courtroom. Justice sometimes felt like carrying stones up a mountain. Lost in contemplation, she almost missed the flash of blue and red lights behind her. Puzzled, she signaled and pulled to the curb beneath a towering elm tree. Her speedometer had shown 3 miles under the limit. Perhaps a taillight was out. From her rearview mirror, she watched Officer Denton Blakely emerge from his patrol car. White, early 30s, with close-cropped hair and mirrored sunglasses despite the fading daylight. His hand rested casually near his weapon as he approached, a posture that set off warning bells in Zora's mind. She'd seen enough dashcam footage in her courtroom to recognize the stance of an officer who had already made judgments. As her window hummed down, she noted his eyes dart into the luxury vehicle's interior, then back to her face, clearly registering the disconnect between the black woman and the expensive car. His expression hardened. 20 years on the bench had taught her to read faces like legal briefs. Officer Blakely wasn't seeing a judge. He was seeing a suspect. "Good evening, officer," she began, hands visible on the steering wheel. "May I ask why I've been stopped?" Officer Blakely didn't answer her question immediately. Instead, his eyes narrowed behind his sunglasses, conducting another visual sweep of the vehicle's interior. The judicial robe draped across her shoulders registered as mere costume in his mind, an elaborate prop. We've had reports of a vehicle matching this description involved in several thefts in the area," he said finally, voice clipped with suspicion. "Mind explaining how you came to be driving this particular automobile?" Judge Hathaway felt her jaw tighten, the familiar weight of assumption settling on her shoulders. "This is my car, officer. I've owned it for 3 years." "Registration and license?" he demanded, not bothering to mask his skepticism. "Step out of the vehicle while I run your information." Zora carefully reached for her purse on the floorboard, movements deliberately slow. "I'm reaching for my identification," she stated clearly, a protocol she'd learned long ago. From her wallet, she extracted her driver's license, the same one bearing her address in Oak Ridge Heights, less than 2 miles from this very spot. Officer Blakely snatched it from her hand, studying it with open disbelief. "This address is in Oak Ridge," he stated, accusation plain in his tone. "How long have you allegedly lived there?" 7 years this December," she replied evenly, though anger burned beneath her composure. "Officer, I'd like to know the specific traffic violation that prompted this stop." Behind them, a black SUV slowed as it passed. Zora recognized Councilman Vance Patterson, who often appeared at community functions with her. He made brief eye contact, then accelerated away. The encounter was being witnessed. Blakely ignored her question. "Step out of the vehicle now." His hand moved to his holster again. "I need to verify some things." The robe shifted as she unbuckled her seatbelt, its heavy fabric catching the last sunlight. For a moment, the gold judicial emblem on the chest gleamed. Officer Blakely's eyes flicked to it, then dismissed it, confirming what she already knew. He couldn't see beyond the color of her skin to the position she held. As she stepped onto the pavement, dignity wrapped around her like armor, she made a decision. This would not go unanswered. The evening air felt electric as Judge Hathaway stood beside her Mercedes, the judicial robe falling in dark folds around her ankles. 3 cars slowed as they passed, drivers rubbernecking at the unusual sight. Officer Blakely positioned himself with tactical advantage, maintaining distance while speaking into his shoulder radio. "Dispatch, I need a 10 to 28 on a silver Mercedes S-Class, plate number HDJ4729, possible stolen vehicle." His free hand remained unnervingly close to his weapon, eyes scanning her as if cataloging escape routes. "Officer," Judge Hathaway said firmly, "this stop is unwarranted. I've committed no traffic violation. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to remain silent while I complete my investigation." His tone carried practiced authority meant to intimidate. "Keep your hands where I can see them." "I'd like to show you my credentials," she replied, dignity coating each syllable. "Don't reach for anything." His voice sharpened as his hand moved to his holster. "Turn around and place your hands on the vehicle." The absurdity of the moment struck her with devastating clarity. In her courtroom, this man would stand when she entered. Here, on this stretch of suburban asphalt, her black skin had rendered her judicial authority invisible. "Officer Blakely," she stated, voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her, "I am Judge Zora Hathaway, Chief Federal Judge of the Eastern District. I am still in my judicial robes because I came directly from court." His expression flickered, doubt mingling with stubborn suspicion before hardening again. "Turn around. Hands on the vehicle. Now." Judge Hathaway did not move toward the vehicle. "I will not be treated like a criminal. I have identified myself as a federal judge, and I expect to be addressed accordingly." Officer Blakely's face flushed with anger. "Last warning. Hands on the vehicle or you're going to be detained." "On what grounds?" she challenged, injecting her voice with the same authority that silenced courtrooms. "Suspected grand theft auto and failure to comply with an officer's lawful orders," he snapped, unholstering his handcuffs. She remained motionless, poised in her judicial robe as passing vehicles slowed further. Cell phones emerged from windows, recording the unfolding scene. "Your body camera is on, I presume?" she asked quietly. His momentary hesitation told her everything. The traffic on Jefferson Boulevard had slowed to a crawl. At least 5 vehicles had pulled to the shoulder behind Officer Blakely's patrol car, their occupants watching the confrontation with phones raised. The evening news would have no shortage of footage. Westlake was a city already tense with racial divisions. This would be gasoline on embers. Judge Hathaway maintained her composure, though rage and humiliation battled beneath her judicial demeanor. 2 decades of training to remain impartial, to embody justice itself, now served as her only shield against this public degradation. "Officer," she tried again, "contact your supervisor immediately. This situation is escalating unnecessarily." Blakely's radio crackled with the dispatcher's response about her vehicle. "Unit 437, that plate comes back registered to Zora Hathaway, 1842, Oak Ridge Circle. No flags, registration current." This confirmation only seemed to intensify his suspicion. "Still doesn't explain how you're driving it," he muttered, loud enough for her to hear. The absurdity struck her like a physical blow. "Because it's my car," she stated, enunciating each word with precision. "Purchased from Westlake Motors 3 years ago. I am Judge Zora Hathaway." "Anyone can claim to be anything," he countered, advancing toward her with handcuffs ready. "Turn around." The line had been crossed. She would not submit to this indignity. "I am reaching for my judicial identification," she announced clearly, knowing the nearby cell phones were recording every word. "It is in the left inner pocket of my robe." "Do not reach for anything," Blakely shouted, his stance widening. "My federal judicial credentials are in my robe," she repeated, voice steady but elevated for the benefit of witnesses and recordings. "I'm going to retrieve them with 2 fingers only. My movements will be slow and visible." Among the gathering onlookers, Judge Hathaway recognized Deacon Williams from her church, his expression a mixture of horror and outrage. Another witness to this spectacle, another person who would testify if needed. With deliberate slowness, she reached into her robe, extracting the leather credential wallet bearing the gold seal of the United States Federal Judiciary. She held it up between 2 fingers, letting the evening sunlight catch the embossed emblem. "This is my federal judicial identification," she stated. "I am Chief Judge Zora Hathaway of the Eastern District Federal Court. I am returning from court sessions today, which is why I am still in my robe. You have confirmed my vehicle registration matches my identity. This stop has no legal basis." Officer Blakely hesitated, uncertainty finally cracking his facade of authority. He stepped forward, snatching the credentials from her hand. As he examined them, the radio on his shoulder crackled again. "Unit 437, be advised, Chief Garland is requesting immediate contact regarding your current stop." His eyes widened slightly, the first sign of genuine concern. Police Chief Elias Garland had extensive connections throughout the city's power structure, including the federal courts. Blakely's radio crackled once more. "Unit 437, please confirm your status. Chief Garland is en route to your location." The balance of power was shifting, but Blakely wasn't ready to concede. "These could be fake," he insisted, though his voice had lost its edge. "I need to verify your identity." Judge Hathaway straightened to her full height, the judicial robe flowing around her like a shadow. "Officer Blakely, I want your name and badge number clearly stated for the record." She gestured to the gathering crowd with their phones. "I want your supervisor at this scene immediately. This racially motivated harassment will be fully documented and addressed." His face flushed again, but this time with the dawning recognition of his predicament. "Ma'am, if you just cooperated—" "That's your honor to you," she corrected, reclaiming her dignity with every syllable. and I have cooperated fully while being subjected to unwarranted suspicion and threatened with detention for driving my own vehicle home from my courtroom." The wail of another siren approached from the distance. Chief Garland was indeed coming. The spectacle was drawing more onlookers. Affluent residents of Oak Ridge Heights now standing witness to one of their own being treated as an interloper. Officer Blakely reluctantly returned her credentials, his confidence visibly deflating. "There appears to have been a misunderstanding," he attempted, retreat evident in his tone. "No," Judge Hathaway stated firmly. "There has been no misunderstanding. There has been a clear demonstration of racial profiling by an officer of the law. And there will be consequences." Police Chief Elias Garland arrived in an unmarked SUV, lights flashing but siren silenced as he pulled to the roadside. At 62, the veteran officer moved with the deliberate confidence of a man accustomed to commanding respect. His expression, however, revealed rare apprehension as he surveyed the scene. The growing crowd, the cell phones recording, and, most significantly, the black woman in judicial robes standing face to face with his officer. "Chief Judge Hathaway," he acknowledged immediately, his voice carrying across the gathering. He nodded with appropriate deference, a public display that spoke volumes to everyone watching. "I deeply apologize for this situation." The recognition was instantaneous and unequivocal. No verification needed, no hesitation about her identity. Officer Blakely's face drained of color as the simple exchange confirmed everything Judge Hathaway had claimed. His hand fell limply from where it had been hovering near his weapon. The confrontation had transformed into something far more consequential than a routine traffic stop. "Chief Garland," Judge Hathaway replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her system. "I expect a full investigation into Officer Blakely's conduct today. I was stopped without cause, accused of stealing my own vehicle, threatened with detention, and treated with contempt despite clearly identifying myself as a federal judge." Garland's eyes narrowed as they shifted to Blakely. "Officer, return to your vehicle and wait for me there." It wasn't a request. Blakely hesitated, searching for words. "Chief, I was responding to reports of stolen vehicles matching this description." "Now, officer," Garland's tone cut through any possibility of debate. As Blakely retreated, shoulders hunched in dawning comprehension of his predicament, Chief Garland turned back to Judge Hathaway. "Your Honor, I would like to discuss this matter privately if you're willing. This isn't," he glanced at the crowd, "the appropriate venue." "On the contrary," she replied, conscious of the dozens of witnesses and recording devices, "this public roadside is exactly where Officer Blakely chose to question my right to exist in this neighborhood and drive my own vehicle. The appropriate venue for addressing systemic issues is often precisely where they manifest." The gathered crowd had grown to nearly 30 people. Among them stood Councilman Patterson, who had apparently returned after witnessing the initial stop. Next to him was Reverend Michaels from First Baptist Church, his presence lending moral weight to the unfolding tableau. "Your Honor," Chief Garland tried again, lowering his voice, "I assure you this will be handled with the utmost seriousness." Judge Hathaway regarded him steadily. "It certainly will be, Chief, because I'm filing a formal complaint tonight, not just with your department, but with the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division." By midnight, video footage of Judge Hathaway's roadside confrontation had accumulated over 200,000 views across social media platforms. The local news led with the story at 11 p.m., contrasting Officer Blakely's aggressive stance with the poised dignity of the robed judge. Political figures issued carefully worded statements expressing concern and promising thorough review, while civil rights organizations called for immediate action. Inside the wood-paneled study of her Oak Ridge home, Judge Hathaway sat at her antique desk, still wearing the black robe that had failed to shield her from humiliation. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured a measure of bourbon, a rare indulgence, but one this evening demanded. The crystal tumbler caught the light from her desk lamp as she raised it, then set it down untouched. Her phone hadn't stopped buzzing since she'd arrived home. Colleagues from the federal bench, community leaders, reporters, and friends, all reaching out in waves of shock, support, and strategic advice. Senator Abigail Morganson had called personally, expressing outrage and offering congressional resources. Judge Hathaway had politely declined them all. This wasn't about political leverage or personal vindication. It was about the fundamental breakdown in the system she had sworn to uphold. A gentle knock at her study door preceded her husband's entrance. Dr. Marcus Hathaway, chief of surgery at Westlake Memorial, carried a similar tumbler of bourbon and concern etched into his distinguished features. "The mayor called," he said quietly. "Twice." She nodded, unsurprised. "And what did His Honor have to say?" "That he's deeply disturbed and wants to meet with you tomorrow to discuss appropriate measures." Marcus set his drink beside hers, then rested his hands on her shoulders. "You know, they're scrambling. The city can't afford a civil rights lawsuit from a federal judge." "This isn't about a lawsuit," she replied, finally taking a sip of bourbon. "If it were only about me, I might consider letting them handle it internally, but it's not." Her thoughts turned to Jeremiah Davis, a 17-year-old honors student whose case had appeared in her courtroom just last month. He'd been stopped in an upscale shopping district, handcuffed in front of his friends, and detained for 2 hours because he matched the description of a shoplifter. No charges were ever filed, no apology given. "How many others don't have judicial credentials to force respect?" she asked, the question hanging heavy in the quiet room. "How many don't have cell phone cameras recording? How many don't have a police chief rushing to the scene?" Marcus's grip tightened slightly on her shoulders. After 23 years of marriage, he knew that tone, the one that signaled her mind was made up. "You're going forward with the complaint," he stated. "With the full weight of my office," she confirmed. "The Department of Justice will receive my formal request for investigation tomorrow morning." 3 days after the incident, the Westlake Police Department's Internal Affairs Division completed its preliminary investigation with unprecedented speed. Their findings, documented in a 30-page report, confirmed what the videos had already shown. Officer Denton Blakely had conducted an unlawful stop based on racial profiling, escalated the situation unnecessarily, and failed to follow department protocols regarding identification verification. Chief Garland personally delivered the report to Judge Hathaway in her chambers, accompanied by Mayor Lawrence and City Attorney Vivian Chen. The political choreography wasn't lost on Judge Hathaway, 3 high-ranking officials arriving together, presenting a united front of institutional accountability. "Officer Blakely has been placed on administrative leave pending formal termination proceedings," Chief Garland announced, his tone carefully modulated to convey appropriate gravity. "The report confirms multiple violations of department policy, professional conduct standards, and possibly civil rights law." Judge Hathaway received the report with judicial impassivity, setting it on her polished desk without opening it. "And the broader issues?" she inquired. Mayor Lawrence stepped forward, eager to demonstrate leadership. "We're implementing immediate department-wide retraining on bias recognition and de-escalation procedures. Additionally, we've requested assistance from the Department of Justice's Community Relations Service to review our policies." "Reactive measures," Judge Hathaway observed, "to an individual incident that illuminates systemic failure." City Attorney Chen cleared her throat. "Your Honor, we understand your perspective and share your concerns about addressing root causes. We've drafted a proposal for a civilian oversight committee with genuine investigative authority and disciplinary input, which requires council approval, public hearing, budget allocations, and faces potential union opposition." Judge Hathaway completed the thought. "How many Dentons are still on patrol today while we wait for these processes to unfold?" An uncomfortable silence settled over the chamber. The question wasn't rhetorical. They all knew the answer. "The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division has accepted my formal complaint," Judge Hathaway informed them, her tone measured but firm. "They've assigned a team to conduct a pattern or practice investigation into the department's stop procedures, use of force incidents, and complaint histories. They arrive next week." Chief Garland's face tightened perceptibly. A federal investigation would reach far beyond Officer Blakely, examining years of departmental data, procedures, and outcomes. "We welcome their review," Mayor Lawrence stated cautiously, political calculation evident in his careful phrasing. Judge Hathaway rose from behind her desk, the black judicial robe settling around her shoulders as she stood. "This isn't about my personal vindication, gentlemen, and Ms. Chen. This is about ensuring that the law protects everyone equally, regardless of the car they drive or the neighborhood they live in." 6 months later, on an unseasonably warm spring afternoon, Judge Zora Hathaway presided over a packed courtroom. Not as its adjudicator, but as a signatory to a consent decree between the Department of Justice and the city of Westlake. The federal investigation had revealed what many residents had long known: a pattern of discriminatory policing that had disproportionately impacted communities of color. The statistics were damning. Black drivers were 7 times more likely to be stopped than white drivers in affluent neighborhoods. Use of force incidents against minorities occurred at rates far exceeding demographic representation. Civilian complaints about racial bias had been systematically downgraded or dismissed. Former officer Denton Blakely sat in the gallery's back row, no longer in uniform, his presence required by the court. His termination had been swift, followed by state decertification proceedings that would prevent him from serving in law enforcement anywhere in the state. Next week, he would face a separate hearing regarding civil rights violations, charges that carried potential federal penalties. Mayor Lawrence approached the podium, his political instincts having evolved into something resembling genuine commitment during the intense months of negotiation. "This consent decree represents not an end, but a beginning," he stated, cameras flashing as he spoke. "Westlake acknowledges its failures and commits to comprehensive reform, including independent oversight, mandatory body cameras with automatic activation protocols, revised use-of-force policies, and community engagement initiatives in all neighborhoods." What he didn't mention, though everyone knew, was the $18 million price tag attached to implementation, plus the $4.5 million settlement fund for victims of documented discriminatory practices. When Judge Hathaway rose to speak, the courtroom fell silent. She had become an unwilling symbol in a struggle she'd been fighting from the bench for years. The robe she wore today, the same one she'd worn that evening on Jefferson Boulevard, no longer seemed like insufficient protection against bias, but rather a reminder of the responsibility that came with it. "The law must work equally for everyone," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the hushed room. "When those sworn to uphold it become its greatest violators, the damage extends beyond individual incidents. It erodes the very foundation of justice." She looked directly at former Officer Blakely, not with vindictiveness, but with the clear-eyed assessment that had made her reputation on the bench. "True accountability isn't about punishment alone," she continued. "It's about transformation. This decree provides a framework, but the real work belongs to every officer on patrol, every supervisor reviewing reports, every dispatcher taking calls, and every citizen watching to ensure these changes take root." As she signed the historic document, applause erupted from the gallery, a spontaneous acknowledgement that what had begun as humiliation on a roadside had catalyzed genuine systemic change. 1 year to the day after being pulled over on Jefferson Boulevard, Judge Zora Hathaway drove her Mercedes along the same stretch of road. The consent decree had brought measurable changes: Traffic stops had decreased by 40% citywide, while successful crime interdiction had actually increased. Body camera compliance stood at 98.7%. The Civilian Oversight Board, initially controversial, had gained respect from reform advocates and reasonable officers alike. She parked outside Westlake High School, where she'd been invited to speak at a special assembly on civic engagement and justice. As she gathered her notes, a patrol car pulled alongside her. The window lowered, revealing the face of Officer Larissa Washington, one of the recently promoted supervisors tasked with implementation of the new protocols. "Good afternoon, Judge Hathaway," Officer Washington called. "Just wanted to say we appreciate you coming to speak with our cadets next week. The new training program is making a difference." Judge Hathaway nodded, a small smile acknowledging both the greeting and the deeper significance of this unremarkable, respectful interaction. Inside the auditorium, hundreds of students waited. When she stepped to the podium, still wearing her judicial robe, the applause was immediate and sustained. "The robe I wear represents something larger than myself," she began, when silence finally fell. "It represents the principle that justice must be both impartial and universal. But beneath this robe, I am still a black woman in America, navigating the same prejudices that many of you face." She paused, surveying the diverse young faces before her. True change happens when we recognize that justice isn't just a concept in courtrooms. It's what we owe each other in every interaction, on every street corner, during every traffic stop. It's seeing the humanity beneath whatever robes we wear.